Hello, everyone, and welcome to this news for February 25th, 2019. And I'm going to rip through this news this evening so I can get straight into something very important to me and something very special that I think everyone will enjoy. So let's break down the news real quick. A cardinal was or pled guilty to raping children. Furthering smearing the Catholic Church's image. Tesla's come under fire after having to lay off a certain percentage of his people and mistweeting by 100,000 expected vehicle production. Just boring business stuff there. However, his stock is suffering dramatically from it. The Dems fight to block a bill passed by Virginia legislators, or whatever you want to call them, to help save and identify babies' lives, and in the continuing population control going on in the Democrats, they of course did not want this to happen, and the liberal media of course supports it, conservative against it. And that's pretty much all the big news for today. There was a lot of hype for the summit coming up tomorrow with North Korea, and I'm of course excited about it, and that is kind of a good segue into what I'm going to do this evening and break down the geopolitical state of our world, how it was when Trump come in, and where we are currently at. So you'll have to forgive my old-timey school map here, but it serves the purpose well, even though it's a leftover relic. And for you people that care about old-timey school stuff, don't worry, I put plastic over this, and no harm will actually be done to the map itself. But let's look at what was going on when Trump took office. So we have the United States and Europe here, who were kind of controlled by the globalist, and they were funding operations that were taking place down here in the Middle East. And then we kind of had a balance of power over here with Russia and China, who are also funding projects and securing the Middle East. And what happened here before Trump come in is it kind of had the same effect as an apartment complex that is riddled with crime. The wars that went on here, and the balance of the displacement of power and the struggle between superpowers to control this area has kind of had the same effect as the apartment complexes that have closed down around America, where the people kind of spread out, and you get these refugees, these what they like to call jihadists and rebels that have spread out across, and then they're not really the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that there was religious fundamentalist groups that have existed here as far back as I can tell in history. And these groups, different sectors of these groups were funded. The globalists kind of funded some groups, and Russia and China funded some groups. And now that there's somewhat of all this corruption here, if you remember early on in the 2000s, there Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, all these were big players in our media and what was going on with our war machine. And Saudi Arabia has kind of always been this neutral place that benefits from both places and plays the middle field. Moving on from that, these fundamentalist religious groups that were backed by globalists and the balance of power over here in Russia and China started to spread out now that they have kind of broken up this area. And the ones, the refugees and all that, the whatever you want to call them, rebels and fundamentalists backed by Russia and China kind of went this way down across here, while the rebels, jihadists, whatever you want to call them, religious fundamentalists, backed by the globalist, went up across Europe and have leaked into America. And that's kind of where Trump come into play. There was this whole like little war game going on in the Middle East that was taking place between where the globalists were competing with the balance of power over here. Okay, so the information up to this point was gained from a document that was sent to Mr. Trump a few months into his presidency, which assessed the state of our affairs around the world. So I have a lot of faith in its authenticity that these events were actually taking place. Moving on from there, now that we have Trump in office and some things have played out over the past couple of years, we can look at a very dramatic change where the globalists have seemed to almost lose control as they have lost complete control of the most powerful asset they had, called America, the United States in particular. And let's kind of look at how things are playing out now and what the Trump effect has had on the geopolitical state. So if we look here at the Venezuelan thing going on, Colombia is right here. We can see that this was one of Russia's backed allies, that where they had implemented socialism, and they have a big debt to Russia. They're trying to balance out. There's a whole other situation there, but anyway, Russia has also acquired friendships here in Cuba, which America doesn't have, and some of these assets that were built over here in the Middle East, the religious fundamentalists and the extremists have been placed over here in parts of Mexico as well. And we're seeing down here the crisis where Donald Trump, through his aid right out here on the border, and Venezuela is trying to rise up against their dictatorship. But what's important about the situation is Russia has kind of separated itself from this situation, pulled back, and they're mainly concerned about what is owed to them. Over here in Europe, since Trump has took effect, there has been a continual self-inflicted wound, I guess you can almost say, that's playing out, and based off their proximity to the Middle East, you can understand why the things that took hold there did as fast as they did. And we could see a little bit of them traces playing out in America. Thankfully, we are getting control of that. But most importantly is the Middle East when it comes to what Trump has done, because Russia, backed by China, has started to pull a lot of its assets out of here, and a lot of freedoms and liberties are starting to come back to these people. I know a lot of people don't like to hear Trump is talking with the Taliban, he's negotiated with Saudi Arabia, and all this and that, but it's important to understand that to bring peace around, we can't take and continue to do what the diplomats and the politicians before Trump have done when they have come in and used America and Europe as a war machine to try and force people to do what they want. That's how we've got this uprising around the world, where people are not happy with the what they call us pigs, basically. And so now coming into tomorrow, we have Trump going over here to deal with this little tiny place, North Korea. And I'm really confident that Trump can go into this tomorrow with more of his gentle hand and honey instead of vinegar approach to help soothe there. And I don't think it's important that we focus on the lack of credibility of North Korea at this time, because if you build friendships with people, then I don't believe there's a need for hostile acts. And I think that North Korea and their leader, as well as the rest of the world, will start to realize that America is no longer controlled by politicians, and Trump is genuinely trying to make things right around the world. We'll all see how that plays out. And I really hope that this was somewhat informative to you all. I took the time to do the research, and I'm not just blabbering on here. These are actually things that exist in our world, and they should have relevance in our life. And I hope they shine some light on where I'm coming from in future broadcasts when I talk about what's going on whenever there's like a crisis in Venezuela and I mention Russia. I think it's important to know why I'm mentioning them. And most of all, I hope you all appreciated my old-timey school map, a callback to a time when things were a little bit different. So thanks for joining into this news tonight. I hope you all enjoyed this. You have a good evening. Don't forget, like, follow, share, invite your friends, invite your families, get the word out there. Help this news help. Thank you all. Good night.